You in at AM 950 radio. Hey, Minneapolis, St. Paul, sending you so much love today. I want my morning stars to meet me at the Santita Jackson and Friends page and the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Everybody, please get on over there. Hey, Robert, shalom to you, my dear brother. Sending you so much love. Hey, on Sunday, November 5th, I will be emceeing and moderating a town hall meeting that Congressman Jonathan Jackson is going to have at the South Shore Cultural Center. It begins at 1. You're going to have lunch from 1 to 2, and then from 2 to 4, it will be on and cracking as we talk about this migrant issue. We've been talking about a lot of issues that appear to be far flung from home, but they're really not. What's happening over in the Middle East can easily become a regional and worldwide conflict. In Iran alone, uh, they control a lot of, I mean, they don't control, I mean, they've been blessed with oil reserves. You know, 20% of the world's oil per month comes through their Strait of Hormuz. 25% of the natural gas of the world comes through the Strait of Hormuz. 2 to 3 million barrels of oil a day come through the Strait of Hormuz. And then you've got the Suez Canal. You've got a lot going on over there. So, yes, do we have interest over there? Is that our oil underneath their sand? No. But that's part of the reason that I've been looking at this because you saw what happened at the airport in Russia, and the fact is, no one who was Israeli came off that plane. I found that out as I've been doing some investigating. So there's a fair amount of correcting of the record that we're going to do on the Santita Jackson show. And when I found out that Israelis were not on that plane, uh, I said, this is interesting. There's a lot going on and a fair amount of propaganda getting us hyped up to go into war. And it's not in America's interest to do that. It's not even in Israel's interest to do that. You don't need to be in an area where you're surrounded by enemies. You got to make peace with people so you can live. So, everybody, please, let's pray for peace, but let's pray for peace here in Chicago on Sunday at the South Shore Cultural Center. We will be led by Congressman Jonathan Jackson, having a town hall meeting on the migrant crisis, and it'll be a joy to have you there. So get on over, let's have some lunch, and then let's get right down to it. Today, we're talking about, of course, uh, what's happening in the Middle East, the latest, and we need to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about John Nichols and Speaker Mike Johnson. Who is he? And he wants to also talk about the Middle East too. But who is he? But specifically about the Middle East, what's happening on these college campuses and beyond? Many Jewish students are now saying we feel threatened. And now you have uh, people who've traditionally taken a stance supporting Palestinians have gotten a lot of blowback. Well, now it's really, really big. They're being told they're not going to be hired. You know, can you imagine coming out of law school with these six-figure loans on your back? And the biggest firms in the country, if not the world, are saying, well, certainly in the United States, are saying that we will not hire you. They're being blacklisted. Well, what's up with that? Got to talk about that. What about free speech in America? We keep talking about fighting for democracy, and we are most undemocratic in this struggle. And we need to think about that, everybody. We have been censoring people. You can't hear the full story anywhere on any side. And it's shameful. And it's dangerous. It is absolutely dangerous. It's dangerous for all of us. It's dangerous for just the whole structure of the country. So I want to hear from you. What about free speech? Why are we being censored? What do you think about that? Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. Should our students at these colleges and universities and graduate schools be allowed to speak their minds? Whatever it is, if they are pro-Israel, if they're pro-Palestinian, if they're pro-peace, you can't even get someone who wants to talk peace and ceasefire on TV. You can't. What's up with that? Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. And let's get to some of these headlines so we can get to the rest of the show. Israeli tanks, according to the Washington Post, have penetrated deep into Gaza. It's the farthest Israeli troops have advanced into the besieged territory since the start of the Israel Gaza war. But it's also important to note that some of America's special forces went in and they were devastated because they're going into urban warfare. Urban warfare is very dangerous because you don't know where you are, but the people who live there know their places. Something to think about, everybody. Israel continues to reject, according to this report, calls for a ceasefire. Indeed, Israel said it rescued one soldier, thank goodness, taken hostage October 7th by Hamas, and Hamas released a video of three other female Israeli hostages. The main gunman's family, Robert Card, warned police about him months ago. Wow. They had concerns about his mental health and access to guns, a sheriff said yesterday. The warning came over 5 months before he killed 18 people last week. Why wasn't he stopped? Officials tasked with checking on him just weeks before the shooting couldn't find him, according to records. Wow. Guns have been used just as a point of information in 35 mass killings in the U.S. this year. And the United Auto Workers are nearing the end of their strike after 6 weeks. Yea, they have reached a tentative deal with General Motors. A majority of workers must approve it, along with agreements from with Ford and Stellantis. Pharmacy workers at CVS and Walgreens are holding a 3-day walkout this week, demanding better working conditions and wages. All right, everybody. And the Supreme Court will consider two big social media cases today. Whether public officials in these cases, school board members in California, and a city manager in Michigan can block people who criticize them on social media. The cases are part of a set of legal controversies that the justices will tackle this term. In Chicago, happy Halloween, everybody. It's chilly outside. Ooh, there's a freeze warning. That is still in effect until 9 o'clock today. Here in Chicago, 37 degrees will be the high. In Minneapolis, St. Paul, you will see snow. 36 degrees. In Major League Baseball, well, the Rangers have taken a 2-1 lead in the World Series. They won last night, 3-1 over the Diamondbacks. In the NBA, the Bulls won 12. They're 2-2 for the season over the Pacers 105. And the Hawks won 27 to the Timberwolves 113. And the Lions were triumphant over the Raiders 26-14. The Lions, wow, having a great season, 6-2. And those are some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. We have got Pastor Stephen Thurston, New Covenant Missionary Baptist Church, yay, with us today. Of course, he's on Facebook at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time every Friday, really making the gospel real for us, going through our issues. That's what this is for. The best book on therapy is the Bible, I would say, if we just follow it, because every whack job in the world is in there. I love it. Yes, I did. I said it. You know it's true. So talk to me. Oh my gosh, you're going to stay on for us to talk about these students. Thank goodness today. Mm. Mm. Ouch. Mm. 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 Amen to that. You can survive a bad day. You can survive a bad You don't really think about wiping off all of this, wiping down your credit cards, your pens, but this, and then you just absentmindedly wipe your nose, absentmindedly. It's something to think about, everybody. Please, please, please be careful. So I want to thank everybody for Dr. Malvo. Hello, Dr. Malvo.
I'm here. Good morning.
Okay, just need to make sure you're not on mute. Okay, great. Okay, how are you?
Oh, I'm okay. I didn't make it to the gym, but I'm okay.
All right. Well, these things happen. So I'm pulling
They
this
do.
down.
All good.
That's right. So, okay, I'm just pulling some other things down. We were finally able to, are we back up, everybody? Just, okay, we should be up now. Okay, so let me know. And I can hear that in the background. Dr. Malvo, I know you won't do that when we're on the air. Do we have Pastor Thurston still on?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I'm here.
Okay, Dr. Julian Malvo. Dr. Malvo, Pastor
yeah.
Thurston, well, they've been in their pulpit 90 years. And he's now yes, he's now, well, and his grandfather was lovingly referred to Dr. King as boy baby.
2 minutes.
They are like Dorian Gray. They do not age. Stephen
Boy baby. That's
boy baby. That was his name, boy baby. One of the biggest preachers in the country, boy baby. Because wait a minute, you said everybody's getting old, but you. Oh my word! But it was true, and the same thing can be said of Stephen's father, Stephen's mother, Stephen. I'm like, I don't know what it is, but if that's what
something in the water.
I was about to say, if that's what the holy water does, give me my portion. Because someone just asked me about Botox. I think they thought they were going to embarrass me. I'm like, sweetie, when I get Botox, I'm not going to get Botox because I don't like that. When I get a filler, you will know, but I won't look like a pillow. But I tell you what, I'll have no shame in sharing it with you.
Hello.
Well, I ain't got there is no shame I don't have a problem with that. I ain't got a problem with aging. I don't have a problem.
1 minute.
I don't have a problem. So when I bring up Dr. Malvo, please put me on mute because I want to bring something down, okay?
Will do.
Okay, Dr. Malvo, I'm going to come to you first and then pivot to Pastor Thurston.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Unbelievable. Okay, count me in, honey, so I can know where we are.
Stand by. About to come in.
Okay. In like 2, 3, 1, something.
Right
No,
now.
no, count me in.
3, 2, 1.
Perfect. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. I think we've got the problem fixed.
This
So
is the Santita
like and share
Jackson
the show,
Show.
like and share the show. That's right, we are back, we're back, we're back, we're back. Hey, Candy Child, love you in DC, my girl. I love you. Sending you so much love today. As you hear my little chug-a-lug going in the background. We're talking about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and how it is impacting people all over the world. We saw what happened in Russia. I just found out as I was looking at uh, different news reports that there was no Israeli on that flight that flew in to Russia. So I'm going to pursue more of that story so we can find out what the truth is. You know, we don't want to spread lies here, right? But what we want to do is look at something that is impacting us here. I mean, as I shared with you, this conflict can become a global conflict in a minute because, Israel has wanted to mix it up with Iran for a while. We've had our hostilities with Iran. Indeed, we overthrew their democratically elected government, installed the Shah of Iran. It was a big mess, and we had the hostages over there in 1979. It took us a year to get them back. So, because we want to control their oil. Why do we want to do that? Because the Strait of Hormuz, which they do control, 20% of the world's oil, 20% of the world's oil per month goes through there. 25% of the natural gas per month in the world goes through the Strait of Hormuz, and 2 to 3 million barrels of oil a day. And that's just that natural resource. Britain has been involved in this, the United States, on and on and on. In the meantime, we are watching conflagrations happen here. We saw young Waid al-Yaoum, 6 years of age. His landlord became so amped up on hate that he stabbed this 6-year-old boy 26 times with a military knife. Was there anything left of this child? It's horrific. Congressman Jackson said this was the first act of terror on our soil. Indeed, it was. It happened here in Illinois, just outside of Chicago, in Plainfield, Illinois. 26 times. You cannot even imagine that. Imagine the horror. Mr. Zuba, Joseph Zuba, their landlord, stabbed the mother. She went into the restroom to say, hey, something horrific is happening. She came out and her child had been pulverized. And that's what happened to him. But we're watching another kind of pulverization happen, the pulverization of dreams. Can you imagine getting into Harvard and these other schools, getting into college, any college, getting that opportunity? And then you get to graduate school or you get to college and then you say, okay, you're learning about all of these different ideas because we all come out of college very different than how we entered. At least you should, because you're exposed to different ideas, different people. And so some people said, okay, as they watch this conflict blow up, which has been longstanding, decades long, some students said, you know what, Israel bears responsibility for this, and we want them to answer for this. We want some accountability, something you really don't hear in American life because that kind of discussion, unfortunately, is censored. It's blocked. And so these students are paid a heavy price. At the undergraduate and graduate level, they've been told by some of the great industry titans, and when I say great, I mean big, not necessarily great as in good, that they will not work. Some of their job offers have been withdrawn. Indeed, the head of the NYU Law Students Association, a young woman, Black woman by the name of Raina Workman, I believe it is, she signed this letter, and she not only is she under investigation now, her job offers have been withdrawn. You do know NYU undergraduate is $100,000 a year. So she's got massive debt, and her job prospects are being withdrawn simply because of her position on this issue. So I wanted to talk to, of course, Pastor Stephen Thurston, whose he has deep, deep ties to Morehouse College. And he's also studied overseas at Oxford and places like that. So we've seen the college environment and the university environment from an international perspective. But we have the president emeritus of Bennett College for Women, one of the great historically Black colleges. Indeed, much of our protest in the 60s was centered there with the students at A&T. And she is the former Dean of Ethnic Studies at Cal State Los Angeles, MIT trained economist, the head of Push Excel, the chair of Push Excel, along with uh, Judge Greg Mathis. She has a lot to say. And as a former president of a school, I mean, what do you make of this?
I'm really sickened at the way that, first of all, there has been such uneven sympathy in Israel, in Palestine, in the Gaza Strip. Uneven sympathy from the media. Certainly, what happened on October 7th was wrong. No one can basically defend what happened on October 7th when over 1,400 people were killed with airstrikes, etc. But what happened afterwards also deserves some criticism. In other words, what's going on right now, in the Gaza Strip, with Israel going in, they say that their goal is to eliminate Hamas, but they're also eliminating thousands of Palestinian people, innocent people, very innocent people. This is very troubling. Now, what college presidents have had to do is navigate this, because at Harvard, as an example, Harvard has been horrible. Not Harvard itself, but the Jewish alums from Harvard have essentially tracked down the names of students who are supporting Palestine. They have got a truck driving around campus with the students' information. Some of these young people have, as you said, had their job offers rescinded. This is absolutely wrong. And just like presidents condemn what happened on October 7th, they must condemn the intimidation of Palestinian students. They must condemn it. But many will not. Why? Because they're afraid about alumni contributions. People think of college presidents as great intellectuals, and many of us are. But the other piece of our work is that our number one priority is the viability of the school, which means fundraising. And so if supporters say, I'm not going to support Harvard anymore because they're Palestinian students, what does that do to Palestinian students? And so it's a situation that's very dicey, but neither the administration, frankly, nor the media have had balanced approach to this. The administration, President Biden says he wants to do something about the students who are anti-Semitic, and we have seen anti-Semitic things happen on campuses. One campus had F Jews spray painted on the side of one of the buildings. Jewish students say that they're afraid, but no one is saying we're not going to hire Jewish students. People are saying we won't hire those who stand with Palestinians who are under siege. They are under siege, Santita. And so, if I were a president today, I would have a statement that would be very balanced, that would talk about the horror of October 7th, but also about the horror of what has happened subsequently. And of course, we know that part of the challenge is Mr. Netanyahu, who has been itching for war with Palestinians, itching for it, that has put out statements that have encouraged all kinds of terrorism against Palestinians.
Call us at 773-763-9278. What are your thoughts? And I'm going to ask my engineer, Henry, to continue to mute me, because I don't want you all to hear this. I want you to hear Dr. Malvo, and I want you to hear Stephen Thurston, because Stephen, you know, the way the story is told overseas, where you have been in school, is different. And it seems that you have more space, and you see that reflected in the size of these marches. Pastor Thurston, first of all, where did you go to school, and where have you been to school?
Northwestern, Morehouse, Oxford, and Mercer University. Those are the spaces and places where I've been to school. And at this point, I live primarily part-time in Morocco. Just returned back to the States this Saturday, and I was sharing with people while there and even before heading back over there, that if you've never lived outside of the U.S. or you don't visit countries outside of the U.S. on a regular basis, you might want to be careful listening to everything that you hear on the news media that's U.S. based, because the reality of the matter is that there's often a lot of propaganda that's pushed, and the true story and the full story isn't being told. And it's very concerning how things are framed here, juxtaposed to what you're able to see from a lens beyond these borders. And these efforts to censor criticism of the Israeli government and advocacy for Palestine rights, they ultimately do a disservice to the real problem of anti-Semitism in the United States, since we keep hearing this. Anything that's said is anti-Semitic. One, I really wish people would do a deeper dive into the definition of what really falls into anti-Semitism, so we would stop abusing that and labeling that so freely on anything that might touch on the fragility of a certain group of people's feelings. Listen, addressing anti-Semitism is important and necessary, but it doesn't require silencing constitutionally protected protests or expressions across this country. And we can't let outrage at speech that some people find reprehensible to blind us to the wisdom of the First Amendment and the danger of empowering the government to police what we say. It's even more important to stick to free speech principles during times of crisis, when rising passions create a heightened risk of authoritarian overreach. And so what's happening at the hands of our government, local and federal, to silence people is scary.
And it's wrong,
concern.
Because what they're
And
doing. What they're doing, Pastor Thurston and Dr. Malvo, is conflating criticism of Israel. I mean, and it's loving critique with anti-Semitism. And I said, wait a minute.
Yeah.
As a special friend, you tell people the tough truth. I mean, as my close friends, when they felt that my weight had gone too far, they knew that different people, hey, my family, they give me a hard time about my weight. Not bad. I mean, my father was very sympathetic. My mother wasn't. She was scared. And that's her reaction. Okay. And so one of my dearest friends came to me and he said, you know what? I had just sung at Ron Brown's funeral. And this was Ron Brown's brother, Julian. You know Chip Brown. Chip is one of my best friends in life. And Chip is our age, although Ron is our parents' age. Go figure. And so he came to me after the funeral. And so many people came to me after that funeral saying, wow. That's how I ended up singing at the Clinton inauguration, because they heard me and they were like, wow, okay. I'm glad I was able to give tribute to the secretary that way. But Chip called me and said, I never get on you about your weight because I know the hard time that different people closest to you give you. He said, but sweetie, you know I love you. I just buried my brother. I can't bury anybody else. I can't do it. So it's Thursday today. On Monday, you will have investigated a diet, and we're gonna figure this out, because you've gone too far.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that. It was the way he did it. I knew I could have gone, I knew it, because I'd gotten out of bed with pneumonia, which I kept getting. To sing at the funeral. I was sick when I was there. Voice even cracked. But the Lord got me through. But your special friends tell you the hard truth, Dr. Malvo and Pastor Thurston. They tell you, hey, you've gone too far.
That's right.
And everyone, even Lieutenant Glenn, 3-star general from the Marines, said, Israel's on their own. We told them not to do this ground incursion. Not only did we catch hell in Fallujah, guess what? The untold story about Vietnam is that when they got into them patties, with all them tunnels and folks that up underneath there, when you go into someone else's house and fight them, you can get your butt kicked.
Yep.
And we continue to conflate this criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism, and they have done anti-Semitism a real disservice, because anti-Semitism is real. It is. That's not what this is. Dr. Malvo, yes. People are not going to get jobs.
It's ridiculous that people continue to make anti-Semitism and criticism of Israel the same thing. Therefore, you basically have put a wall around Israel and says that anything Israel does is right. And we know good and well that it isn't right. We know good and well that the foundation of Israel, the very foundation with the Balfour Declaration, it was set up to have conflict. How are you going to just take somebody's land and say, live with it? This is a new country. Many Palestinians they favor a two-state solution because obviously you have an apartheid in Israel and in the Palestinian Gaza Strip that has 2 million people in a space that's probably about the size, Santita, of, I don't know, less than New Jersey. It's one of the most densely populated places in the world. And yet you're going to go in there. Why not? If you want to take out Hamas, which is not the same as Palestine. See, people say Israel, if you criticize Israel, then it's anti-Semitic. But no one talks about this anti-Palestine. Palestine and Hamas are not the same thing.
But as a college president, how do you handle that when you've got to raise your money, Dr. Malfoy? I mean, for the first time in Harvard's history, they have a Black woman who's the president. Got it. Check, check, check. We know, we've seen this happen to other HBCU presidents who've had progressive politics. But once you get in that office and you've got these hundreds and thousands of students' lives in your hands, you're like, well, my mother told one of our friends who became the president of a big HBCU, she said, your politics are going to have to shift because you've got to educate these kids. She said, and we understand that. Isn't that, but that's real, is that not?
It's very real. I mean, unfortunately, my big mouth gets me in trouble. That was part of my challenges at Bennett. I went on the air and said something not too nice about Mitt Romney. Actually, I called him an idiot.
Oh,
and
yes. Nice. Well, nice.
The board chair called me and she said, Mr. President, did you call Mitt Romney an idiot? I said, I believe I did. She says, I need you to write letters to these 3 members of the board who are Republicans and either explain yourself or apologize. I said, I don't want to. She said, I know you don't want to. She said, but you should have said it. I said one of the most tepidly worded apologies I've ever written. It wasn't really an apology. It's like, let me acknowledge that this may have been offensive. But the fact is that when you're a college president, you have to be, you got to eschew some of the politics. You really can't be up in everything. There's some things, principle, that if a college president supports Black Lives Matter, that's not a problem. But I think that what's happening right now is it's a bit more, the donors are so powerful. It's not just donors. The Anti-Defamation League has taken a role, and they talk about they're going to start monitoring campuses for anti-Semitism. Of course, their goal is to stop anti-Semitism, but monitoring campuses while students are protesting, what are you really saying? Are you part of this? Let's withdraw job offers. As you say, people at NYU, Harvard, these young people, even when the schools give you, Harvard has been very good about giving low-income, high-achieving students full rides, but a full ride is not a full ride if you still have to go back and forth, to home, if you still have to buy books and do all that. So these young people are coming out of college with enormous debt. And what we see happening is they're being attacked because they have opinions. Well, we're, basically suppressing discussion, frankly, breeds both anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. And so when we talk about anti-Semitism, let's also talk about Islamophobia, because that's real as well. And I would commend the Department of Education, the Office of Civil Rights. They've actually said they are looking at anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. We have to use those two things in the same sentence to talk about balance. Now, there is no balancing what happened on October 7th. We need to say that. That was awful. But what is going on now? You bomb at hospitals. You can't get supplies in. People are drinking toilet water because they can't get regular water. That's what's happening in the Gaza Strip.
Well, I mean, 4% of their water is drinkable, and that was before this happened. So
Yeah.
it's like you can't, but I mean, I'm curious, what do you do? Because you've got these powerful donors. And I mean, what do you do? Because we need a Julianne Malveaux to be president of HBCU. I need you. I do. And I need this young woman to come out of law school and be a lawyer and fight, have a job. I'm assuming she's got tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. She is
Santita,
under investigation right now. And she's not the only one. This is happening everywhere.
we have to surround that young sister. We have to appeal to our Black attorneys like our Willie Garys and our Ben Crumps to find something for her, to help her find employment. So I'm sure she had great offers, but they can generate great offers for her too. So I will appeal to them to reach out to her, because I'm sure she has to be devastated right now. Under investigation, about to graduate, offers rescinded because she has an opinion. And that's why the young people are protesting with masks on, because they don't want to be identified, because they don't want to be placed in not only financial jeopardy. The Jewish alums at Harvard, as I said, had a truck riding around the campus with the names of the people that they're calling anti-Semitic. They're not anti-Semitic. They're protesting Israel's policies. That does not make you anti-Semitic.
Look, I know what I went through in that Harvard interview. And it was like, on my father's politics, my mother said, what's so insulting about this is that you've called her. She didn't call you. You didn't write to her. You've come to her school. You tried to pull her out of class. You all go after all of the so-called top students who get the top scores in the country. She's among them. And then you send her through this. Oh, my mother was, my mother was, she wasn't undone. She was outraged. Nothing undoes her. Nothing's gonna make her undone. She was like, wait a minute. And she said, and you expect me to tell my daughter to turn down a full scholarship from the most prominent Black school on earth to go into this? No. She said, I don't think so. No. She said, I wasn't happy about you anyway. She said the only reason she applied is because my husband told her to apply. She said, I never thought this was gonna be a good idea. My mother went off, okay? Professor Alan Count, who has made his transition, he got an earful. Oh Lord, on that day, because after the kerfuffle, they started calling. Well, we hope the president, Derek Bach, who was the president at the time. Well, we don't want this to reflect badly on Harvard. My mother said it did. My father was like, well, no. My mother was like, yeah, it reflected poorly to me. You all are awful. Do not call here anymore. Oh my!
That's our Jackie. That is our Jackie, and she,
Oh, be quiet, Dr. Malveaux. You agree with her. That's the scary part.
That's my sister. Of course, I agree with her.
And you were cheering her on while she's getting her PhD from MIT. I'm not even thinking about Dr. Malveaux. Stay right here, everybody. Let's talk about dissent on these campuses. These kids are losing job offers, and Jewish kids feel like they're under threat. Because hate begets hate. So you have people who are resentful on all sides. Jewish kids should not walk around these campuses feeling threatened, and people who support Palestinians and the two-state solution shouldn't feel threatened either. You shouldn't lose a job. You should not, because wait a minute, some of these kids are trying to get admitted to school. Trust and believe this is going to come up in these interviews. Pastor Thurston, Dr. Malveaux.
Yep.
Oh. This is going to come up in a job interview. In the little aside, the little question, you go and you sit with someone and you're like, well, how are you? Having a really hard day. It's happened to me. I get it. But if we are fighting for democracy all over the world, we have to fight for it here. And we cannot let somebody else's issues tear away at this great American project. We've had our flaws, we've had our fights, I get it, but America is great. On paper, and on our best days, we are great in action. You got to fight for democracy, no censorship, and you fight for the person you disagree with. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show. Call us. It's the Jim. I'm going to get right to you. 773-763-9278. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in a minute. Dr. Malvo, you know you had a hard time trying to raise that money.
I did. Yes, I did. And like I said, I have to eat crow with the damn Republicans. You know,
And the
I didn't eat
Democrats
much
are
crow,
rough
but
too. I mean, Carolyn Ruff said, "I
oh
love
yeah,
you, Queen." I mean, they're all in it. They're all in it. It's a you. This is really dangerous. It is something that people have whispered about, though, up until now. Now it's something to talk about, and that's what makes it interesting.
girl, what's up with your background noise?
Honey, that's me and my little computer, my little
Oh, okay.
thingy-majiggy. I'm getting this together. I'm pulling. Sorry about that. I'm pulling some other things up. Just before I go on air, I find these stories and I try to grab the first iteration of them before they get
Gotcha.
pulled down,
Right.
because that's what happened. These stories get pulled down and you can't find them anymore. So you guys, that's what I'm doing, because the censorship is very, very real.
It's real.
Oh, yes, it is.
But what they're doing,
Yeah,
they're doing so much damage. What were you saying, Pastor?
I can't do my Facebook Live for a month. All of a sudden, I posted something.
Oh, they put you in Facebook jail?
Oh, wow.
I'm in
What?
Facebook jail. Yeah, for a month.
What? Well, did they think you were Arab? Because that's what you look like.
Ooh.
I'm not lying.
No,
That's
they
why.
just,
That's
you
why he
know,
likes
so-
Morocco, honey. He blends.
I blend right
He
in.
blends right in. That's why when Dr. Malvo talks about the melanin challenge, I'm like, really? Okay. All right. Most melanin challenge soul sister I've ever met in my life. But I love you. You're my girl. Love you.
Hey, well, I always tell people I am a walking example of white people's perfidity.
Well,
Because you don't get black folks who
you
you
put
don't
it
get
so
people
well.
who look like me unless white folks are doing something they had no business doing back in the day.
That's
You
right.
put it
That's
so
right.
well. What did my mother say? You are evidence that something went very wrong.
There you go.
Not perfidy. My mother didn't use that. She said, "Well, no, because first time I went to Africa, I think I was 6 or 7, and they looked at my mother and they were like, 'Oh, soul sister, you're home!' Ah, ooh, ha, ha." They looked at my father. They said, "Oh, well,
Well, what I hate.
And
you
then,
go to Ghana and they call light skinned black people obroni, which gets on my GD nerves.
of course, well, thank you." Well, that's what it is. They looked at me and they looked at my mother and they said, "So much has happened. Oh, we love you." And I had my afro. I was rocking that thing. Oh yeah, I was. Oh yeah. They said so much has happened. I said, "Well, I'll be darned." Okay. I didn't know what that was. My mother, of course, explained it to me later on, several years later. She said, "You are evidence that something went very wrong." She said, "So whenever light-skinned black people start bragging," she said, "You're not that light,
Oh.
honey." She said, "Don't brag, because you're evidence. There's something." She said, "Now I am the picture of resistance." Oh, my mama had it down. Boom. Picture of resistance. I said, "Oh, okay." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Well, it is interesting that the we who are melanin challenge, we tend to be angrier. And part of it is because we walk in evidence. Think about Hugh Youth.
Yeah.
About as yellow as he wanted to be, and about as revolutionary as he wanted to be.
Well, my mother
Because
said that's part of the problem. She said, "You sit up there and she said they are your family and they reject you."
they ain't my family.
Yeah, they are.
They ain't my family.
Malvo. Malvo. Not
The first time I met
Malvo.
The first time I met somebody who said something about they were about, because I said, "So where are my effing reparations?" I said, "You want to talk? If we related, you got money, you better give me some of it." And the cause too.
Well, and therefore, the board of trustees in Aggie Land said, "Well, she is a lot." She is because black schools are very, very conservative, And
Yes, they are.
extremely. So the way you handle dissent, I mean, it is because it's like the death knell, right? So that's what I'm thinking about these black schools too. You know, it's just it's a lot, and I just think that what's happening is very, very dangerous. You know, you're
2
cutting off
minutes.
people's
It is very
livelihoods.
dangerous.
Oh yeah, it's so dangerous that,
And it moves us toward
We have Attorney Fancher and Dr. Gibbs ready to go
Okay.
also.
on the hill with the white supremacy. You know, we have a white supremacist as the Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Yes.
Who describes himself as a Southern Christian. We know what that means because we know that those Southern Christians were the ones who told Dr. King to stop the protest.
that's right.
That's why we got the letter from the Birmingham jail. So, you know, we got a segregationist as a Speaker of the House who's prepared to send money to Israel, but not to Ukraine. And also only to Israel. President Biden, to his credit, also asked for relief, for money for Palestinian relief. And what's his name? Mike Johnson said, no, he's not going to do that.
Girl, look,
He doesn't
first of all,
want to
why
do
don't you give some
Palestinian
relief to Americans? I mean, if you printing up $100 billion, do you know Americans need that money?
Girl, please don't get me started on that topic
No,
either.
no. It's not propaganda. It's just like, wait.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah, I'm tired of this. And you continue. They continue to tell Americans no. And
But
Tell
everybody
everybody
else,
else yes.
Americans are starving out here. This is crazy.
Not only that, but both Ukraine and Israel, they're talking about this is about preservation of democracy. We don't have democracy in Alabama.
I don't have it here because what's what we're talking about today. You can't get people cannot say their piece. Mark Fancher, Dr. David Gibbs, stay right here. I've got Dr. Malvo, who is frightening, but we love her. Former president, she's a president
Stand by.
emeritus of Bennett College for Women and past. Well, I'll give that all to you.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world. We can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world. I am
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. We're talking about what's something that's happening on these college campuses around the United States that's very, very disturbing. Jewish students feel threatened. Students who've expressed publicly sympathies for Palestine, they have been threatened with job loss, with investigations, and on and on and on. I mean, they have been told that not only are we not going to hire you, we're going to tell other people in the American marketplace not to hire you. And it's not just going to be the American marketplace. These are some of the most powerful industry titans. If you express any sympathy for the Palestinians, you will not have a job, but you will have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. Got to talk about that. As we're fighting for democracy, is that democratic? Call me at 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. I am Santita Jackson coming to you on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, and on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. So let's get to these headlines, everybody. According to the Washington Post, Israeli tanks have penetrated deep into Gaza. It's the farthest Israeli troops have advanced into the besieged territory since the start of the Israeli-Gaza war. Robert Card, the main gunman's family, warned police about him months ago. They had concerns about his mental health and access to guns, according to sheriffs. The warning came over 5 months ago, before he killed 18 people in Lewiston, Maine. The United Auto Workers strike is nearing its end after 6 weeks. The union reached a tentative deal with GM yesterday. A majority of workers must approve it, along with agreements with Ford and Stellantis. The Supreme Court will consider 2 big social media cases. In these cases, school board members in California and a city manager in Michigan can block people who criticize them on social media. Is that right or wrong? Wow. It's Halloween, everybody. The first snowfall could happen here in Chicago today. What happened? It felt like spring last week. I just don't know. In Chicago, we're going to have a high of 37 degrees, along with a freeze warning, just warmly for Halloween. Minneapolis, St. Paul, you will have snow straight out, 36 degrees. In Major League Baseball, the Rangers are leading in the World Series, 2-1. They won last night, 3-1 over the Diamondbacks. In the NFL, the Lions 26. They're having a great season, 6-2. The Raiders 14. In the NBA, the Bulls 112, the Pacers 105, and the Hawks 127, and the Timberwolves 113. And those are some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. We've been talking with Dr. Julianne Malveaux, President Emeritus of Bennett College for Women in Greensboro, North Carolina, the former Dean of Ethnic Studies at Cal State Los Angeles, MIT-trained PhD economist, and Pastor Stephen Thurston. He was at school at Morehouse, Northwestern, Oxford, Mercer. He's been all over the world, all over the country, and he also lives part-time in Morocco. So he's got an international perspective on all of this. And we have got Dr. David Gibbs, brilliant historian from the University of Arizona, and Mark Fancher, civil libertarian, great author and lawyer from the National Conference of Black Lawyers. Let me start with the newest additions to this panel. We have callers, but I want to start with you. Dr. Gibbs, what do you make of these students who are getting all of this blowback? You have Jewish students who feel under threat, and you have these students first who expressed pro-Palestinian sympathies who are being told, number one, that some of the top donors are withdrawing from these universities, and these students are they're being denied employment. They're being blackballed. They're being blacklisted. What is going on here?
Well, it's a little bit like the early 1950s with the McCarthy period, where people are being retaliated against for expressing viewpoints. It's an obvious threat to civil liberties and free speech, and that's exactly what it's intended to do. It's intended to chill discussion, to block out any possibility of open, free discussion here. It is happening in both directions, but it must be said, just in fairness, that it is much more pronounced with regard to people who speak out in favor of the Palestinians. It's disgraceful when it happens in either direction and should be condemned, but in either direction. But it must be acknowledged that the major threat here to free speech is much more to the pro-Palestinian perspective. And I think that anybody who cares about civil liberty should condemn that, even if you were a diehard supporter of Israel and completely disagree with the pro-Palestinian objective. The threat to civil liberties that is being presented here must be widely condemned. It should be widely condemned. But it is nevertheless part of a larger trend I'm seeing. The phrase cancel culture is not just an invention of Fox News. It's a real problem. And I see it in class. I mean, I'm much more careful what I say in class in the last few years. There is something in the culture that is deeply intolerant of dissenting views in general. And now we're seeing it big time with the issue of the Israel-Gaza war going on. It's having a major impact in stifling debate on that war.
Mark Fancher, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that we all need a reality check, and I think that the students who are experiencing this are getting a taste of what reality is with respect to freedom of speech in this country, and that is that it is a myth, that it has always been limited in law and in practice. In law, it's limited because while the rhetoric is that you can say anything that you want, you really can't. Even in law, you can't defame somebody. You can't publish child pornography. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. You can't use what are called by the law as quote unquote fighting words. There are all these limitations in law, but in practice, there are also a great many limitations on what people can say, what they can or cannot do. And if the courts and the police don't enforce this, then mobs will, people will. And that's what these students are experiencing. And it's nothing new. This is not a new trend. It's always been this way. You know, you introduced me and mentioned my association, my membership in the National Conference of Black Lawyers. It's because of an incident like this that I joined the organization because back in 1984, now very distinguished professor Adrienne Wing, at the time was only about 27 or 28 years old. She was a member of NCBL, and she functioned as the organization's International Affairs Section chair. NCBL was invited to participate in the Palestine National Council in Amman, Jordan during that year, and she went as the representative of the organization. While she was there, she went through the receiving line, and in the receiving line was Yasser Arafat. When she got to him, she embraced him, as is the custom and the tradition in situations like that. And what she did not know is that there was a photographer there from, I believe, the New York Post who snapped her picture embracing him. And when she returned to New York and she landed, she saw her family waiting for her. She saw a huge crowd of security people waiting for her. And when she got off and they swarmed her, she asked, "What's going on?" And they unfolded a copy of the New York Post, if I'm correct about the paper, with her photograph embracing Arafat, occupying the entire upper fold with large headlines that says, "New York lawyer beats the drum for PLO." Now, in the aftermath of that, her employment with a large law firm was threatened. The organization itself received bomb threats constantly in various different forms. The funding, the foundation funding that NCBL received went away immediately. And what attracted me to NCBL, because I was not a member at the time, was a quote from Adrienne, where when they asked her, "Is all of this going to stop you?" And she said, "No way, we're going forward." And I think that we all have to recognize that that's what we're up against. There are certain limits on what people can say in this country and what they can do. You're not always given advance notice of what they are, but you will find out soon enough what you can say and what you cannot say. And for those who walk around with the fantasy of this being a land where freedom of speech is something that's guaranteed and which you can engage in with impunity, it's really a dream world that you're living in, and it's time for us all to wake up.
Well, you know, Julian Malveaux, you saw the picture of Reverend Jackson and Yasser Arafat from 1979, and that tracked him through even to now, you know, and it tracked all of us. You know, you saw that happen with me in my Harvard interview and all of that. I mention it a lot, everybody, because I think that what we're doing is so dangerous and it's so unnecessary. This is not the way Americans are supposed to live. We're not supposed to be doing this. Let me go to Jim very quickly. Jim, what's on your mind? Is Jim still there? Okay, let me.
Hello, Santita.
Jim, hey,
Good morning, Santita.
What's on your mind?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm just thinking about our overreaction to our terrorist attack in 2001 led to the longest war in American history and the most expensive war in American history, chasing ghosts around Afghanistan, getting regime change in Iraq, getting innocent people killed and our poor soldiers killed, and the trillions of dollars that went into oblivion. And as far as this particular terrorist attack, I think Bush was actually warned about our terrorist attack and ignored it. And I think Netanyahu's got to take some responsibility for this terrorist attack. I can't believe that they could get that kind of munitions. And
he was warned,
but he
ignored it.
But he didn't do anything about it. He ignored it. And this is another tremendous overreaction. I mean, it's been a two-state solution since I was a kid. The elusive two-state solution. Jimmy Carter worked on it, I think, and who else was good at it? I think Clinton was pretty good at it, and they were working hard at it. But that's eventually, with the help of God, I think. What do you think, Peter? That's the only solution I can think of.
Well, you know, we've been pushing
a two-state solution.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, look, Israeli security and Palestinian justice are locked in together. I mean, that's the way the Lord works it out. You know, you've been promised, and I will not step over the preacher here, Pastor Thurston. You're promised a seat at the table in the presence of your enemy, because your enemy is God's child too, right? Am I wrong?
That's right.
Oh, okay.
You on it.
Okay, I've listened to you. And so it's like, enough of this already. And now we're going to have American troops on the ground in urban warfare. My heavens, urban warfare is the worst. It's the worst. These people have tunnels. They live there. And not to mention the fact, I don't care what Janet Yellen said. We are broke. Now, at some point, you have to tell Ukraine and Israel, I cannot afford to do this. I can't. I'm 33 trillion in debt. I can't do it. I've got Americans starving. You would think that if you drove out on the roads that America looked like Dubai. Come on, you just left the Middle East, Stephen Thurston, Pastor Thurston. You know what the infrastructure looks like in that part of the world. And you come back to the United States, and people come to the United States and they are shocked. Are they not, Pastor Thurston?
Very much so.
Why are they shocked?
What's presented isn't the reality. We present ourselves very well, but we don't live up to the standards and the expectations that we portray in so many ways.
So, I mean, so Jim?
Go ahead. But I think let the diplomats work out these peace agreements. I agree. How we blunder into these situations and the cost of human lives and money, I agree, Sandy. There's got to be a better way than that. To just blunder in with arms and money. Oh. Anyway,
you're right.
But anyway, you guys have a good morning.
Thank you,
have
sweetie.
a good morning, guys. Thank you very much.
Call your congressman and let them know. Enough. We want a ceasefire and no more money for you and you and you and you. Number one, I can't afford. If you want to pass out $100 billion, you need to pass it out to Americans. How about that? Yeah, I said that. And I'll add more to it before I take anything away. Thank you, sweetie. Let me go to Maria. Maria, what's on your mind?
Good morning, everyone. There's a lot on my mind today, and but on this particular topic, I know I've just been so busy, but I do listen when I'm driving.
We love you. We love you, Maria. We love Maddie.
I know, and I love you guys. So anyway, this whole thing is like an onion. There's so many layers to it, and it goes back eons, okay? Now, what Hamas is, which is a terrorist organization who's bent on destroying Israel and Israelis, that's their mission, right? What they did in massacring those folks at the border was horrendous, was horrible. And they didn't even stop. It wasn't just women, men and women. It was children as well. So it was a horrible situation, which of course shocked the nation and other nations throughout this world. If you have a beating heart and sympathy for folks, yes. The other thing is Hamas is entrenched in that area, and they don't especially represent the interests of the Palestinian people.
Well, first of all, they're a creation of Israel and the United States. Remember, Hamas was created. Hold on. We got to put the history in here. The Israelis did not want to deal with the PLO and Yasser Arafat, so they came up with another group who would be the counterweight to Yasser Arafat. That's Hamas. And you have all kinds of different people mixed in it, but that's who they are. So they're kind of reaping the whirlwind on this.
But at this point, Hamas is not doing the Palestinian people good by using them as shields and such. I'm not, blaming the Palestinian people. My heart bleeds for them as well. Because what's happening now in the Gaza Strip is horrendous. Enough with bombing these people out of their homes. I have seen, and I don't watch TV that much anymore because the scenes are just too horrendous. And when I saw these two little toddlers, 2-year-olds with bloody heads in the arms of a reporter trying to rush into the hospital, I broke down and cried. To me, they're two children, two little ones. So they're Palestinians. Yeah, my heart bled for those Jewish children that were killed too in the massacre, and for all those folks that have been kidnapped and being held against their will as pawns in this crazy, crazy war. Hamas are terrorists, and Netanyahu is kind of like a dictator. He wants his way.
No, he's one too. Wait, no, Maria, he's one too. Yeah, he needs to be taken to the International Criminal Court. They're doing collective punishment. That's a war crime. He's not a bully. He's a war criminal. This is a war crime. You don't deny people water and fuel. There is raw sewage in the streets. They are bombing hospitals. Everybody in Israel is in the military. So technically, this is a mess. And the only way you can really undo it,
that's what I'm saying.
we should be declaring a ceasefire and just stop it. Stop.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. You know what? Unfortunately, it's easier said than done. I think many people want a ceasefire, but Netanyahu and Hamas do not.
No.
They do not.
No. Hamas said, wait a minute, hold on, stay right there, Maria. They were trying to negotiate a ceasefire. It has been Netanyahu who has said definitively no ceasefire. They have said they want to eliminate, they want to level Gaza, but they want another Dresden. Stay right there, Maria.
Oh, they want to take it back. They want to take it back.
They want to take it from them, not back. It was never theirs in the first place.
Right.
Dr. Gibbs?
It was the British that were in there. The Brits were in there.
No. The Arabs were in there, and so were Jews, and so were Muslims, and the British went in there, and they started a colonial project, and we now have an absolute hot mess. Dr. Gibbs?
Yes.
Yes.
I would agree.
Okay. I think that one of the things I saw in the New York Times recently is by somebody who normally, it's not if I intensely dislike, but did say something intelligent. That was Thomas Friedman.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Thomas Friedman is somebody who's never met a war he didn't like and always seems to argue for maximum use of force, often in very disturbing language. But recently he wrote an op-ed that seemed to urge Israel to consider not using force this time because anything Israel does will make the situation worse. That's something I've been saying for a long time. Now, Friedman seems to be saying it too. And he noted that, somebody he pointed to is Prime Minister Singh of India. Mm-hmm. In 2008, Lashkar-e-Taiba, a Pakistani-backed terrorist group, attacked Mumbai and killed 160 people in a terrible act of terrorism. And Singh essentially did nothing. And he explained in his memoirs why he did nothing. And the reason was anything he would do militarily would have made the situation only worse and would have increased the suffering, increased India's insecurity, and produced no positive results whatsoever. It would have been just empty revenge without any purpose. And so he did nothing. And Friedman, to my astonishment, praised that attitude and said this is something Israel should learn from. Indeed, it is something Israel should learn from. Sometimes the best thing to do is nothing. America would have been much better off if after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, we did nothing and did not start needless wars in Ukraine, Afghanistan and Iraq at enormous human and financial cost with no positive whatsoever. Israel should learn from the experience of our failures after the 9/11 terrorist attacks and the positive that resulted from India's restraint in 2008, and probably should consider a political solution, not a military solution, recognizing there is no military solution and revenge is not a solution. Santita,
yes.
I'll have to leave in a moment just because I do have to teach today.
Yes.
But thank you very much for having me on once again. I always enjoy it.
Oh, always enjoy having you. Because Dr. Malveaux, unfortunately, these conversations, we're not able to have them freely. Dr. Malveaux, the final minute belongs to you.
No, but we must have them freely. We must create spaces where people can talk. They can be critical of Israel, critical of Hamas. And Israel and Hamas are not the same thing, but all Jewish people are not Israel, and we need to stop conflating things. All Palestinians do not support Hamas. We need to stop conflating things. The challenge we have is that we talk in shorthand or we don't talk at all. We need to have these in-depth conversations. And President Biden and others have to be more balanced in what they say. They have to be more balanced. I'm happy about the Department of Education comment about anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, because they're both forms of hate. And as someone said earlier, hate begets hate. What we have to do is stop the hate.
We have to do it. Well, we're going to continue this conversation with John Nichols and the Speaker of the House, who, of course, Dr. Malveaux just ripped to shreds in the previous section. Goodness. Oh, don't laugh at her, Pastor Thurston. She is. And Mark Fancher, don't laugh. This is where she gives people a hard time. But you know what? She's a truth teller. I'm not mad at Dr. Malveaux. Love her to pieces. Love her to pieces. Stay right there, everybody. We're going to continue to talk on the YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Everybody, please continue to like and share. Yeah, so Robert said, there you go, Dr. Malveaux. Boom. How about that? Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. This this is just, Maria, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, sweetie, what's your closing comment?
Well, what I'm saying is people are people. And unfortunately, they have leaders who are too wrapped up on revenge basically it's revenge, power, and greed. And they don't think about the best interests of the people. And we're talking little ones, women, the elderly. So I think there needs to be an attitude adjustment. I don't know how that's going to come about, but somebody's going to need to adjust the attitude of both Hamas and Netanyahu, because they're both bullies.
Santita, if I could jump in,
please.
I would challenge listeners to do a little research. The New York Times did a tracking of attacks in Israel and Gaza, and for people to continue to highlight Hamas is a revisionist history. It is not accurate.
Explain.
When you look at the numbers of deaths that have been perpetrated, if you just look from 2008 to 2023, what Israel has done to Palestine does not compare at all to what just happened with Hamas fighting back. Anytime you beat the hell out of
We have John Nichols ready to go.
years, and then they decide to swing back, you cannot then label them as, they're big, bad bullies. No. Look at the history. Look at how many Palestinians have been killed.
Over 6,400 to be exact. 6,400.
In this conflict, it's been more than 8,000. And then you had the president of the United States. Oh, yeah. I'm saying, this is the biggest open air prison. Some people call it a concentration camp in the world. It's not the same thing. And it's just wrong. It's wrong. And you have to call it wrong. The concentration camps in Europe, they were wrong. Though, in fact, the term ghetto did not exist in the United States prior to the Second World War. That is the gift that our Jewish brothers and sisters brought here, because they saw,
2 minutes.
They said Black people in America are treated, wow, we just came out of this. Then, interestingly enough, POWs, German POWs came here and said, now y'all treat Black folks worse than we treated Jews over in Europe. Ooh. This is let's we need to get the history right. I'm with you.
Exactly.
Just get it right. Get it right. Netanyahu is a war criminal. If the ICC were fair at all, they would not just go after Black and brown people. They'd go after these white criminals too. They don't do it. And we need to stop that. And now you have a whole world of people who had been colonized, who are angry as hell and who will not take it anymore. But they don't have the ethos of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, who said we've got to fight this with love, and Gandhi. And when you don't have that, then you have the violence. That's the genius of Dr. King. He said he knew Black people had been abused. Gandhi knew that Indians had been abused. He said, you know what? If we're going to come out of this hole, we have to come out of this loving, connected to God. If not, we'll all be destroyed. Because you won't be seeking justice, you'll be looking for revenge, which is what they're looking for right now.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. I agree.
Don't
make it right.
No, it's all.
Thank you.
I'm with you.
Always a pleasure to be with you.
I love you,
Take
Dr.
care.
Malvo. Do you want to say anything before you go?
No, I'm good. I got that last minute and said what I had to say. We just need balance, and I agree with the brother historian. Do some research, y'all. Just do some research.
John Nichols, how you doing? We got a full house. We got Mark Fancher here with us, attorney Mark Fancher, and Pastor Stephen Thurston. Pastor Thurston lives in Morocco part-time. So he has another perspective. He went to Oxford also and Morehouse. So he has stand by.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, back with the Santita Jackson Show. You know what time it is. John Nichols from The Nation magazine, New York Times best-selling author, along with Bernie Sanders. It's okay to be mad at capitalism. It's okay. Particularly when Janet Yellen says, I don't have enough money for Americans, but we can fund 2 wars. Ukraine, Israel, not a problem. Are you serious? To the tune of $100 billion? I don't understand it. We've got to talk about this with you. And we have a new speaker who, I mean, the quarrel in the Republican Party was about funding Ukraine. But all this money is going to Israel. But Americans want a ceasefire. 2/3 of us do. But only, well, as of a week and a half ago, only 3% of the Congress signed on to that. So there's a disconnect here. And then you've got this racist rhetoric coming out of Israel from their prime minister. I heard Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday, Benjamin Netanyahu, to pronounce it correctly. He talked about the forces of civilization versus the forces of barbarism. I mean, I tell you, as a Black person in America who was 3/5 human, as an indigenous person to Africa who were savages, indigenous people in the United States have been savages. Every indigenous person is a savage. That is just, it's incendiary, it's racist, it's wrong. And now we have a ground assault. I mean, America's military leaders were ignored, John Nichols. They were ignored.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it's like, but I have to pay for it? Literally? John, come on.
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
Mm-hmm.
Come on. This is, and of course, John, you were on with attorney Mark Fancher, National Conference of Black Lawyers, and Pastor Stephen Thurston, one of the oldest and largest Black churches in the country, New Covenant Missionary Baptist Church. His family they founded that church and they've held that pulpit for 90 years. And as I was sharing with you, he went to school at Morehouse, but then he went to Oxford. He lives in Morocco part-time. So he brings a lot of different pieces to us here, which I think is important to this discussion. Oh, what do you make of what are we looking at, John? What?
Well, you've put, as always, a lot on the table there.
Yes.
And there is much and that is good, because the fact is we're in a moment where we are buffeted by information and misinformation from many sides. And I think that you began with something that's very, very important. This notion that Janet Yellen, and frankly, everyone in our political establishment and the elites of our politics, tells us that we always have the money to fund more and bigger wars around the world. Our own wars and the wars being fought by others. And the United States has become essentially the banker for warfare. And also is the sales department for warfare, as we sell so many weapons systems. And this is exactly what Dwight Eisenhower warned us about. You know, it's in 1961 in his farewell address, his last great speech to the American people, his effort to reach us and communicate something important to us. He told us to beware of a military-industrial complex, which would have among its interests the enrichment of those who make money when there is conflict, who make money when there is war. And we have that military-industrial complex. It is overwhelming us. And at the same time, we are saying that we don't have the money to fund a child tax credit that we know will take tens of millions of children out of poverty. And so we have a disconnect on our domestic policy, and it's a practical disconnect as well as a moral disconnect. And I would suggest to you that there is also a disconnect on our foreign policy, a practical and a moral disconnect. And this is an important thing to understand. The calls for a ceasefire in the Middle East are now coming from Pope Francis, from the National Council of Churches, from Jewish, Muslim, and religious groupings, from dozens and dozens of rabbis around, or in the United States and around the world. I mean, this is a very, very strong moral outreach on behalf of a ceasefire. No one that I've seen, none of these people seeking ceasefire from a religious standpoint or in these religious groupings, is missing the reality that that Hamas launched a terrorist attack and killed more than 1,000, roughly 1,400 people in Israel, most of them Jews. At the same time, they're recognizing the fact that Israel's bombardment and now ground invasion on Gaza has killed roughly 8,000 Palestinians, most of them Muslims, some Christians, and that a disproportionate number of those dead are children. And so what people are saying is, look, you don't have to like people on either side in any circumstance. You don't have to agree with them doctrinally, politically, to call for a ceasefire. The roots of a ceasefire in religious tradition, in the Abrahamic religions and others, is an understanding that you will, in a ceasefire situation, have to hopefully cooperate with those who are your enemies, with those who you disagree with fundamentally. But you do so because you want to save lives. And that's the core message at this point. That is the moral message that we are hearing, not as well reported as it should be in U.S. media, but from religious leaders around the world and in the U.S. There is also a practical argument. A practical argument is that that this assault on Gaza at this point, and I'm not the person saying this, these are military experts, including military experts in Israel, is unlikely to achieve the goals that the Israelis say they want to achieve. That at the end of the day, it will lead to an immense death of innocent men, women, and children. It will inflame tensions. It already has around the world. And it has the potential to lead to a larger war, one that is more deadly, more expensive, and more destabilizing for Israel, Palestine, and the Middle East, and potentially the world. And so there are so many reasons to pause at this point and say, as difficult as it is, we have to find a way to stop the killing, to get the hostages released, to try and stabilize circumstances, and to move toward peace negotiations. And believe me, Santita, you and I have been around these issues for a very, very long time. I've reported for years in the Middle East, in Palestine and Israel and Jordan and adjoining countries. And I can tell you, I know this is hard. I know it, we shouldn't be naive or simplistic when we talk about seeking peace. But we should remember that a very devout man, Jimmy Carter, came to the presidency in the 1970s amidst incredible conflict in the Middle East, the 1973 or the 1977 conflicts, or everything associated with that. He came to the presidency at that time, and he said he was going to try to achieve peace. He didn't achieve total peace, but look at what he did to bring, leaders from throughout the Middle East to Camp David, to succeed in getting an agreement with Egypt that was historic and profound. I mean, the fact of the matter is, even in the most terrifying and difficult times, Jimmy Carter succeeded in achieving a measure of peace. And if we can see that at that moment, then we have to be able to see our way to a ceasefire and some sort of effort at peacemaking in this time.
Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. I know that peace is possible. I remember the night that they signed those peace accords that Menachem Begin and Anwar Sadat signed them. Jack Odell, as you remember, the legendary Jack Odell, he used to live with us.
One of the great
Oh
figures,
yeah.
Yes.
He was on staff, and when he lived in New York, he lived in Canada, but when he came to Chicago to work, he stayed with us in our house. And so we all gathered in my parents' bedroom, and we were watching this, and he said, this is a brave thing to do. It's a wonderful thing to do. Sadly, he signed his death warrant that night. He was speaking of Anwar Sadat, and 2-3 years later, he was gone. But it was the right thing to do. But no one's calling for peace now. And even my brother, Congressman Jonathan Jackson, has said to me, just shaking his head, he's one of the few congresspersons to sign on to this ceasefire. He said, signing on to this, he said, fighting for peace is like the hardest thing here. I said, and here we are. And I just like Mark Fancher to comment on what he's heard from you. Mark Fancher?
Well, I agree with almost all of it. I mean, I think the one thing that we have to be careful about is that yes, we should call for peace, but we have to understand that that is just because of the urgency of the crisis. That peace does not mean that that will be lasting. The phrase "no justice, no peace" is frequently dismissed as rhetoric of people in the streets, but it's a very profound observation that you can bring about a ceasefire. You can cause people in the moment to stop fighting, but if they don't have justice, then you're going to have the same problem again that's going to resurface at some point in the future. And really, what has to be the objective in that region is not simply peace, but justice. And what that means is something that is inconsistent with the imperialist agenda, because what it means is that you'll have to deal with an apartheid state, which is what Israel is, in the same way or in a better way even than you dealt with an apartheid state in South Africa. What happened there in South Africa was not a two-state solution. In fact, that was rejected. I mean, the apartheid regime wanted to set up separate countries and separate places for the African population. That they call them Bantustans, so that South Africa, white South Africans, could have their country, and they could give arid, barren land to black people and let them have their country. No, that everybody knew that wouldn't work, and all serious people never even tried to pursue that. What they pursued was justice, and justice meant one person, one vote. You set up a country where everybody participates in a real democracy, where everybody gets to have a say in the politics and the economics of the country. And then you've got something approaching justice. I mean, at least as much as you can do now, given historical circumstances, because real justice would mean returning Palestine to the Palestinians. And so I think that when we're talking about Palestine, that has to be the objective, that you eliminate the state of Israel as it currently exists, and you set up a country where there is one person, one vote. And to the extent that those who are Zionists, those who are Jews, believe that it will leave them vulnerable, then they are left to do what everybody does in any democratic environment, in any democratic country, and that is to pursue influence and power through persuading people, through helping people to understand the rightness of their point of view, whatever it may be, and then you let the chips fall where they may.
And Pastor Thurston, you live in Morocco part-time, and you've experienced life as a student uh, outside of the United States. I mean, what say you? I mean, what are you hearing from? What did you hear from John Nichols?
Yeah, I think that it's just ultimately important and incumbent that we, through this, tap into our moral compass, because we're witnessing immense war crimes and blatant genocide. And ultimately, silence is a sin. So whether you're on a college campus, whether you're in a corporate space, when we see something, we're morally obligated to say something rather than to act dumb and numb to the facts that are before us. And it takes people who are in positions of power and privilege to utilize that power and that privilege to speak up, to fight back, and to assist those that are being now marginalized and damaged and blacklisted because of their position from a moral perspective, to say, hey, people are being hurt, harmed, hindered, and hammered literally into the ground. And we need to adjust this and not continue down this path that leads to a no-win situation for anybody.
See, John, one of my concerns as I go to the callers is that by having such a narrow discussion, such a one-sided discussion, Americans are being denied the opportunity to give full vent to their feelings. And then what did John Kennedy say? Well, Dr. King said, riots are the language of the unheard. And when you make nonviolent revolution impossible, you make, riots or something like that, to paraphrase, possibly just inevitable. And I'm worried about that because now you have Jewish students on campuses who feel threatened, and Jewish people. And you have people of Arab descent, Muslim or not. If you just look a certain way, because no one knows who you are or how you get to God, or if you care about God at all. They just on site. You're black, you're white, you're brown, you're Arab, you're Hispanic. That's just how we do it. And it's not, and it's bringing out something in America, not creating, but bringing up something. First of all, we've not had a full discussion about this issue, but it's bringing out something that's very dangerous. Look at this 6-year-old child who's pulverized by a military knife 26 times, John. There was nothing left of that boy. I mean, it happened here,
Yeah.
just outside of Chicago. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and everybody's walking around really uptight, scared. Before I go to the callers, what about the
Yeah, let
ceasefire?
me,
Why is that so difficult? Do you want to go to the callers? I don't understand.
no, let me say a few quick things here, just important things. So first and foremost, look, it shouldn't have to be said, but it does have to be said. Anti-Semitism is evil. It is hateful. It is hateful to target someone because of their religious faith or because of their religion, their religious faith. Is hateful. Is hateful. It it is morally wrong to target someone. And we begin with those basic premises because, unfortunately, in this debate, there have been efforts to suggest that someone who takes one side or the other in the debate is anti-Semitic or is Islamophobic. The fact of the matter is that it is possible to be a person of faith or of no faith who holds views on many sides of all these issues. And I think that part of the problem here rests with our media, because our media tends to frequently to try and simplify these issues. These are complex issues. People in the Middle East disagree about these issues. Palestinians disagree about what the right approach is. Israelis disagree about what the right approach is. There have been anti-war demonstrations in Tel Aviv. People in Tel Aviv have said this is the wrong way to go. There was a huge protest by Jewish Voice for Peace at Grand Central Station on Friday evening. Hundreds and hundreds of Jewish Americans arrested, saying ceasefire now. And so when we put this in perspective, when we begin to understand the whole of this, what we recognize is that there's a deeper debate to be had. People can debate whether you want a two-state solution, a one-state solution, all the different approaches. They can debate, political responses. They can debate peace processes. But at the heart of this, to get to an honest debate, to get to a truthful debate that does involve the concepts of both justice and peace, you need to begin by stopping the killing, right? You have children dying at exponential rates.
40% of them. 40%
Just,
of those who've been killed in Gaza are children. 3/4 of them are women and children. This is unbelievable.
And the level, the amount of death, where you're hitting, it's horrible. You don't even want to recount the records. Literally, that the number of people being killed is at historic levels. And this is true for Jews who died in Israel on October 7th and in its aftermath. One of the most horrific events since the Holocaust. And for Palestinians who are dying now at a rate that is, in all of the horrors of the Middle East, that is at this new and awful level. And so you stop it. You stop this, right? You pause and you say, hold it. What is the right answer here?
You have a ceasefire. You stop.
Yeah, that's it. It's not complicated. And that is why Pope Francis on Sunday in St. Peter's Square said simply ceasefire, ceasefire, ceasefire. He repeated the word so that there would be no lack of clarity.
But you know
And
what?
I think that
he needs to say that to Netanyahu, who said absolutely not. See, that's nice to say that in
I
St.
think he
Peter's.
is.
No, I think it's nice to say it in St. Peter's Square. But say it to him
I
because
think he would gladly say it.
he should
I think he would gladly say it. Yeah.
put in a phone call.
But I think he also needs. But I think he also needs to say it to American leaders because it is notable that when Pope Francis was saying ceasefire, literally at the almost exact same time, Mike Johnson, the new Speaker of the House, was absolutely and specifically by word rejecting the concept of ceasefire and talking about how he wanted to speed up arms shipments, right? And so you have a situation now where this concept of ceasefire is being undermined, not just in the Middle East, but it's being undermined in Washington.
Well, I mean,
and
the people who are making the money are the munitions industry, John. I mean, I think that's why we have to have an honest conversation about what's happening here. And, all the kumbaya about Muslims and Jews and Christians coming together, I think that is great. It is wonderful. I'm a Christian. I believe we're all brothers and sisters, period. Okay, come from the same God. That having been said, this is a land dispute. This is political. This is about some money. Chevron operates right off of Gaza because it's one of the largest reserves of gas in the world. And we need to deal with all of those pieces, but you can't shut down the discussion on it. And that is what is happening. And these kids are coming out of school. They have not been threatened. They've been promised you're not going to work. At least not in some of the most prestigious firms. You are not. And NYU, Harvard, I'm taking my money from you. Penn, no, that's not right. And if you call yourself an American or you support American institutions, then you need to support that which is American, which is democracy. It is anti-democratic. It is wrong. And I'm tired of being shut down on this. It's not right.
But, and in Congress, they're talking about censuring Rashida Tlaib and potentially other members of Congress who have called for a ceasefire and who are trying who are advancing a point of view that is different from that of many in the leadership. And you can like what an individual in Congress says, or you can dislike it. But, some of the language that has been used to try and shut down dissenting voices is so over the top and so antithetical to an open and honest debate.
Well,
again, people will say things on both sides of this fight, on both sides of it. And some of those things may offend the sensibilities, may offend the belief systems of one or another. But, all of that draws us away. All of that draws us away from the core concept that, as we wrestle with whose words we like or dislike, children are dying in Gaza, dying, every few minutes. And so
every 15.
The concept of ceasefire becomes urgent.
Well,
and
children,
it is something
mothers, fathers, whole families are being wiped out. I mean, it's enough, John. Enough already. I want the callers to hold on because I'm going to be talking to you. I'm going to get your comments very quickly on the other side of the break. I know you've got to leave us, John. But John, I've got 1 minute.
I do.
No, it's okay. 1 minute for you. Just your comment, your closing thought.
Things are going to get more intense, not less. This is going to become more difficult, not easier. There will be a tendency on the part of some folks to simply turn away, to try and say, well, I'm just not going to talk about this because it's so contentious. We can't do that. As the pastor just said, this is a time where we have to look squarely in the eye of the moment we're in, and we have to look for both moral and practical ways out. I happen to believe that the arguments for a ceasefire are strong, both morally and practically. But whether you agree with me or disagree with me, it's time to speak up, right? This is not the time to be silent.
And it's not the time to be silenced. How about that?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, we need to be hearing all perspectives on all platforms, and we're not. And we're all poorer for
and we do
it.
And we do need to lift up moral voices, in particular those who really are, I think, trying to find a place that is rooted in our greatest teachings. That we speak to those we think of as enemies. We speak to those we disagree with, and we try to find a way to peace and reconciliation, not to stop speaking and just start fighting. That's not the right way to go. The right way to go is to find a path to.
Amen. Stay right here, everybody. Lee and Paul, I'm coming right to you on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Everybody, thank you for standing by. We were trying to get a lot of video and audio issues resolved today, and you've come around. Stay right here. Love you, John. Everybody get the New York Times bestseller, It's Okay to Be Mad About Capitalism. He wrote that with, of course, none other than Bernie Sanders. I love you, everybody. Pastor Thurston, don't you leave yet. Mark Fancher, don't you leave yet. I want you to engage these callers very quickly. I love you, everybody. God bless you. From the Santita Jackson Show on AM 950 Radio and the voice of progressive America, WCPT. Could I go to Paul from Seattle? Henry.
Just patch them through.
Oh, thank you. Paul, what's on your mind, sweetie?
Good morning. Yeah. Go ahead.
Paul?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. My comment is this. Will we ever beat our swords into plowshares? William James would say no. In his 1906 essay, The Moral Equivalent of War, he begins, the war against war is going to be no holiday excursion or camping party. The military feelings are so deeply grounded in our ideals of glory and shame, et cetera, et cetera. This is about winning and losing. So I have a proposal. And you don't have to worry about this one, Santita. It's never going to happen. But what if the Western nations that are responsible for this, what you call hot mess in this region, were to offer a deal and say, look, because we know money talks and BS walks. What if we were to say to Israel and the Palestinians, we will pay you, let's say each $100 billion over 10 years to build your nations and be peaceable with one another. And the first one to violate the agreement loses their share to the other one. There will be no interlopers trying to interfere with that deal because both sides will have an incentive to say, "Nuh-uh, you're not going to ruin this one. This is going to cost us money." But I'll tell you what, Santita, we will approve. And the new Speaker of the House says, "Yeah, let's take the money from Ukraine, $60 billion, and another $18 billion. We're ready to spend $78 billion to Israel right now for military aid to obliterate Gaza." But I guarantee you don't have to worry about us spending $100 billion to each side over 10 years because, as I just said, William James said, it's about winners and losers, and our military feelings are so deeply grounded in our ideals of glory and shame. We want winners and losers. We don't want peace. No, we're never going to beat our swords into plowshares.
Well,
we are going to sell our cloak and buy a sword is what we're going to do because we want the end times here.
Well, I think you're right, but I think the gentle correction I would make, because I hear you, it's not just $100 billion that would go to Israel. They put Ukraine in that. They put Yemen. They put other $14 billion outright to Israel for munitions.
Sure.
I always want to, get things be as precise as we can be. But Reverend, he talked about to talk to you, and I have another holy man, Mark Fancher. I'd love for you both to talk about beating our swords into plowshares. Pastor Thurston. Is it possible? It's
people
possible.
Don't want to do right. It's possible. Is it going to happen? Ego and pride and power and all of those things have melded together that make it so impossible for what makes sense to make sense.
What are you hearing in Morocco? I mean, when you're in Morocco, what are you hearing in that part of the world? That's Africa, it's African, it's Arab. My sister taught over there, as you know, for several years and had a marvelous experience there. I mean, and what are you hearing right now? Because you just got back.
Yeah, the king made it very clear that he's against what's happening to the Palestinian people, and that we as a community function well with Jew, Muslim, and Christian being brothers and sisters, not having issues and conflict, and we're gonna keep it that way. And so while I was there this past week, peace, calm, everyone relating and getting along and doing business and interacting with love, care, compassion, and concern for one another. That was the vibe. That was the energy.
Mark Fancher. And with all this money in war, I mean, wow. But go on, your thoughts?
Yeah, I actually think that this is not as complicated a situation as we like to think it is. It becomes complicated only because in our human arrogance, we believe that we have the capacity to resolve these kinds of conflicts and to come up with solutions. When in fact, God has already given us the solution. It's just that we're unwilling to follow his direction, as he's outlined very clearly. And the fact is that he talks about the world and he talks about the way that he wants us to go. And he says, don't go the way of the world. And in the world, you have forces of good, you have forces of evil. And if we take it upon ourselves to try and to compromise with evil, if we take it upon ourselves to try and devise solutions that in some way appease evil, then that's inconsistent with what he wants us to do. He wants us to overcome evil. And overcoming evil is a very challenging thing. It's in earthly terms a very dangerous thing, but it is something that you have to do without fear and without compromise, understanding at the outset that you will suffer. You may die, but it's redemptive suffering. And it is the reason why Dr. King is so widely revered. Dr. King was a genius in his own way, but he was also an incredibly honest man who just simply offered himself as a servant of God and who did what God directed, which was to pursue justice, to pursue God's kingdom without compromise and without fear. So I think for all of us who might be intimidated by all of the retaliation, by all of the threats, by all of the actions that have been taken against people who speak up, then you have to not have that fear. You have to understand that God has promised that if you pursue what he wants you to pursue in an honest way, with integrity, that he's got your back. He's going to be with you. And, in the absence of that, then you do become afraid, you do compromise, and you don't actually push this thing in the way that it needs to be pushed so that evil is ultimately overcome. And I honestly believe that notwithstanding the power of the corporations, the imperialists, the capitalists, the Zionists, and the Israeli state, that notwithstanding those things, the power of an army, a massive global army of people who are committed to real justice can overcome all of that because God is in the mix and he will ensure that that happens. And absent that level of confidence in the righteousness of righteous causes, we'll forever be intimidated and afraid and worried and frustrated because we can't solve it.
That's true. I mean, in the book of Revelation tells us that God has already won. The question is, where are you going to be in the fight? When your name is called, will it show that you were with the world or were you with God? I mean, Dr. King he lost his life on that ballot on that balcony. He's more alive today than he was in 1968. Paul?
Can I make I wanted to put a finer point on Mark's. I think evil is overcome when we turn away from it. When we compromise with it, Satan loves to be, you want to strike a deal? And when we fight against it, it's like wrestling with a pig. You get down in the mud. When we turn away from it in favor of justice and truth, that's when we overcome it. In other words, we make Satan persona non grata. He's nobody.
God is everything.
Santita, I've got to jump off.
All right, sweetie, what do you want to say? I can't believe you stayed this long, but I knew you'd get excited. This is your part of the world in part. In part. So, what's your closing thought?
Chris, as this conflict escalates, so must our commitment to free speech, speaking truth to power, and looking out for the marginalized, and doing our best to lift humanity up, regardless of what side they stand on. These are human beings. These are real people dealing with real problems, and we have to come together as a collective community of human beings to help to support and extend love to one another, to bring about a place of peace at the best, to the best of our ability.
Amen to that. I appreciate it, and I'm glad you stayed with us. This
Thank you.
long, because I know you've got a lot of responsibilities, but I'm glad that the people were able to hear your voice today. And I want to thank Janet Thomas. She is informing us that the president of the American Psychological Association, I'd heard that she'd been speaking out in favor of a ceasefire, and she's taking a lot of heat. They're trying to remove her from her position. This cancel culture, everybody. Nobody's going to win with that. Let me go to Lee really quickly before we go. Lee, you were at the party on Saturday. My Lee.
Yeah, I recognize you right away. No, this is Santita. The only way I can describe your show is you're a bunch of adults and you're just explaining to the children to stop arguing and fighting over bullshit. That's all. You're the only adult media that I've met that actually does a good job of this. You really are.
No,
I really appreciate you for that.
But I'm not.
Yeah, and the people you have on know what's going on in a moral way, in a humane way, and everybody else wants to fight about the nickels and dimes on the floor. I don't know, but you're really on a impressive show. I hope you get a bigger, whatever they call it, because you need to be influencing guys like Biden and so on. No, seriously. Well, I've got to let you go, I know. But I really enjoyed meeting you. You're a great woman.
Oh,
thank you very much.
And you're a great man with a lot of great information. Sending you so much love. Lee, thank you for coming to the party.
Oh, thank you.
I hope you had fun.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, bless your heart. Well, Mark Fancher, what are your final thoughts? We've got a lot coming at us all the time. This is a lot, but you know what? This is nothing new. It's just everything's been unearthed and it's been put before us, right? Mark, are you there? Well, Mark might have gone on. All of these issues that we're looking at, Lee and everyone, this is not new. This is now just here. When Mark Fancher talked about his colleague from the National Conference of Black Lawyers, there was a photo of her hugging Arafat just as a greeting. That was just the right thing to do when you greet someone in that part of the world. People hug and kiss. I remember when that photo went out with my father and Yasser Arafat. Boy, our lives changed. But you know what? Embracing people and calling and locking Israeli security into Palestinian justice was the right thing to do for Reverend and Mrs. Jackson 40 plus years ago. I'm glad they did it. And the hits that they and I and our family took, I wouldn't trade anything for it because it was the right thing to do. We survived it. It was okay. And let me tell you something, with all of the threats that can come your way and the things that people can say about you, it's really okay. It really is okay. You can't worry about that. And I tell you why you can't worry about it. Because this life it goes by just like this. Eternity goes on and on and on and on and on. And you will have eternity to think about all the wrong and right you did here and all the things that you could have done, should have done, would have done had you had more courage. Or had you been thinking correctly. The fact is we need to live past today. You need to start thinking about the world that you want to leave to others tomorrow. And we don't need to leave a nuked out world, a bombed out world, a world that we have just destroyed just because of our egos. What's happening to the people of Palestine is it is not just a war crime, it's just sin. It's off the mark. And guess what? All Jewish people don't think it's right. All Israelis don't think it's right. So stop conflating criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. If the Arabs and the Jews are Semitic people. So I mean, what are you talking about? Just stop. And if you're above criticism, something is wrong with you. No one should be above criticism. Everyone should be able to be corrected because we all have flaws because we're all human. Now we have to get to being humane, being kind to people. It's not just awful when you see men and when you see women getting killed. It's horrible when you see children and women and men, human beings being killed. We're all God's children. It's not right. It's not right. And this has to stop. We need a ceasefire now. And you need to move toward a peace agreement. It is not our oil. It is not our gas up under these folks' feet. You have to figure out a sharing agreement, something that's fair. Western European imperialism has to go. All forms of imperialism have to go. You need to stop coming into people's countries, taking their stuff. It's not going to work anymore. So enough. So I think, Lee, I hear you scratching around in the background. We're going to go. And I love you, everybody. Okay. All right. Okay. So I love you, everybody. So just remember that. Oh, you're going to Nairobi? All right, Carolyn. All right. May God bless you. I know you're gonna have a wonderful time. Nairobi is big, 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 big fun, and it's beautiful. Let me know if you go to Victoria Falls. It's a little bit of a distance away, but it is something. It is one of the wonders of the world. Love you, everybody. God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. I love you, and thank you, Henry, for a great show. See you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Everybody, please like and share, like and share.